Hello and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. My name is Ian Runkle. I'm a Canadian criminal defense and firearms lawyer. Today I want to talk about an update in the case of Ali Mian. Now, if you're not familiar with this one or you need a refresher, Mr. Mian was living with his mother and he's home asleep. It's the early hours of the morning, and unbeknownst to him, his house has been targeted for a break and enter. This isn't an impulsive thing, and it's also not a plan where they're going to break in and just steal things by stealth. They're not looking to sort of break in quietly. Instead, they've brought weapons, including a loaded 9mm handgun, and they've brought zip ties and ropes. What they intend to do is to attack the homeowners, attack the occupants, subdue them, gain control, and then do whatever they want from there. This is an extremely dangerous situation. This is, in fact, lots of people's worst fears. Now, unfortunately for the burglars, Mr. Mian turns out to be a licensed gun owner, and he was able to get a hold of his gun. He engaged in a confrontation with the burglars. He fired a shot. That shot killed one of the burglars, and the others fled. One of the burglars were arrested. 3 more, because they had 5 people in total, have not been caught at this point. So, what happens to Mr. Mian? He gets charged with second-degree murder. And he is immediately arrested and taken into custody. So, that was sort of the initial story. And at the time I said, why are you arresting this guy? Because how are you ever going to prove murder on this? How are you ever going to get past self-defense? This seems like such an obvious self-defense case that it would be difficult to imagine any circumstances where Mr. Mian could be convicted. It's just hard to imagine any sort of additional fact that would get you to, oh yeah, you're going to be able to convict this guy. Sure enough, I was right, because the Crown Prosecution Service in Ontario has dropped the charges. So Mr. Mian is free and clear. He's now, he's clear of this. They could, of course, relay the charges at some future point, but that's unlikely. His lawyer has said that he thinks that this is a good precedent for both for Mr. Mian, but also for gun owners in general. And his lawyer's kind of wrong in that sense, because this isn't a precedent at all. The prosecution isn't bound by this. They can do whatever they want the next time. And hopefully that might be a good thing, because they might actually learn from this and they might do better next time. What we're seeing here is part of a very worrying trend where there's very obvious self-defense indications, and they just decide to go ahead and lay charges now anyway, in the hopes that the investigation will eventually turn into something where they have a case. You see this with Ian Thompson. You see this in another case that I mentioned where the Crown prosecution eventually dropped the charges, saying that it was one of the clearest cases of self-defense that they'd ever seen. Well, how do you get more clear for self-defense than 5 people breaking in with guns and zip ties and ropes? It just boggles the mind. Oh, and masks, just, to round things out. It's just a little crazy on all of this. It boggles the mind. And when they do this, they're really taking the wrong side. This is really kind of a thing where you've got a good guy in the form of Mr. Mian, who is a licensed gun owner, will have had background checks. The police have vetted this guy. He's not the guy who is breaking into other people's houses. And clear bad guys, the guys with masks and like all of that. It's ridiculous. And the police are saying, well, we're going to take you, the clear victim in this, throw you in jail because he was arrested on February 19th. He doesn't get bail until March 2nd, 2 weeks later. He's released on a $130,000 bail. That wouldn't have been a cash bail, but they would have said, listen, if he screws up, somebody, like one of his family members, probably signed over their house for that. So it's probably if he screws up, somebody loses their house. They also ban him from having any guns or weapons or ammunition during that time. Even though they know that there's 3 bad guys out there who might have a grudge against him, and they say, oh, well, we're taking your guns away. Best of luck going forward. Don't take the side of evil, police / Crown Prosecution Service. You know, you should look at this and go, whose team are we on? Is it the good guys? And if not, then maybe you should reevaluate. This is frustrating. He will be out a ton of money because he's had to hire a lawyer. He's had to go through all of this process and so forth. And one question people often ask me is there any way for him to recover that? The answer is no. He's never going to get that money back. He's never going to get that time back. It's just gone. So I would really like to see a change in practice when you've got these very clear indications of self-defense, like it's a homeowner versus invaders, or where you've got somebody who's got serious injuries or those kinds of things. Maybe hold off on charging them until you have something that looks like it will hold together as a case. Just kind of saying. Mr. Mian had no criminal record at the time that he was charged. No outstanding charges. So it wasn't like this is a guy who's involved in anything or anything that we know of. So, yeah, it's frustrating to be able to say, I told you so once again. You see these cases and I almost hope that it's wrong. Like, I hope that they're like, oh yeah, and it turns out that he was also some major drug dealing kingpin, because you just hope that there was a reason for this. But no. So the good news is he's released. He will be free of his conditions. He can go back to living with his mom, and hopefully they're going to return his firearms. I say hopefully because there's no guarantees of that either. So I'm going to try to find out. I'm going to reach out to his lawyer and say, hey, but I expect that what his lawyer is going to say is, we don't have any comment. That's the appropriate thing for a lawyer to say. So I expect it's going to be what he says. But yeah, a happy ending, but still a frustrating one. Why did they charge him in the first place? I just don't know. Anyway, lots of people sent me this story and asked me to comment, even though I was actually flying back from the UK at the time. I'm still a little sick, so I'm a little under the weather. If this video is not up to spec, well, I've got the flu, so it is what it is. But thank you for watching. I hope you found this to be interesting or educational. If you have questions, leave them in the comments below. I will try to address them, especially because I know I may have missed something in all of this, but this is a really frustrating case. I want to thank my Patreon supporters at the $50 level: Traveling Science Man, CCFR, CAIM, Canada's National Firearms Association, and the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. At the $30 level, Sights and Arms Limited, and Jane Babe and Luxor. At the $20 level, Lindsay Metcalf, Larry Kalniak, Here's a Coin, Legal Witcher, Cameron Johnson, Andrew Elsich, Vicky, and Dorky Dane. And I also want to thank my $10 supporters who will be in the crawl immediately following, as well as all of my supporters. I appreciate all of you guys. Thank you for watching. I hope this is armed you with knowledge. See you next time.